Okay, Pesach 5780 Tuf Shin Pei. Here we are about to embark on the Chag that makes the Jewish people the Jewish people. This is our Atzmaut. This is our independence. This is our freedom. So, as we approach this holy day of Pesach, in these crazy times that we live in, and a lot of you, or hopefully a lot of you, have followed the ideas of the Seder. But now I just want to give my Pesach drasha, my Pesach sermon. And I was planning on doing it outdoors, but it's too windy, and it would have messed up with the filming. But why did I want to do it outdoors? So Pesach, Rabbi Cook explains, is Chag Ha'aviv. It is the Chag, it is the holiday of spring. But that doesn't just mean that it's spring in terms of the weather, or in terms of even the nation of Israel, but it's the Aviv of the world. It's the spring of the world. We have a halacha, we have an opportunity to make a bracha. If we see a fruit tree anywhere, well, there's different halachic parameters, but I'm supposed to go to a fruit tree and make a bracha that we love creation and we're positive about creation. And then that is why, says Rabbi Cook, what Pesach is essentially the world changes when the Jewish people leave Egypt. It's very interesting how when we talk about the world changing, we talk about the exodus of the Jewish people from Egypt, it doesn't necessarily say Yitziat Yisrael Mitzrayim, that the Jewish people going from Egypt. It does. But when we reference the story of Pesach, we say Yitziat Mitzrayim, the going out of Mitzrayim, of this thing called Mitzrayim. We call it the country of Egypt, but it's much deeper than that. Chag Aviv represents the world going out, springing forth, blossoming from its prior parameters or prior restrictions or prior limitations. So now, let us get to today. There's a lot of questions that one needs to ask tonight when they sit down for the Seder. Number one, why is it that I am commemorating Pesach, or the leaving of Egypt, when it's nighttime, when actually the Gemara says the Geula, the redemption, happened at nighttime, but the actual exodus, or the Jewish people leaving, left in the morning? That's a question number one. Question number two is that we start out Magid. We start out this holy part of the Seder tonight of talking about the story of going out of Egypt. And we started out with the song or the verse or the paragraph of Ha Lachma Anya. This is the bread of affliction, or poor man's bread. Or, says the Talmud, it doesn't mean poor man's bread, but it means the bread that answers lots of questions. Anya means la'anot, means to answer. Onim alav harbe dvarim. Because of the matzah, I'm able to answer lots of questions. What is the connection between those two answers, a bread of affliction, and the fact that it answers lots of questions? Also, if we go through that first song of Magid, of Halach Ma'anya, tonight by the Seder, we see that it says this is the matzah that we ate in Egypt. But according to most opinions, this is the bread that we left, that we ate. We left Egypt, not that we ate in Egypt. So then what does this mean? So Rabbi Cook and others explain that Halach Ma'anya teaches me that sometimes I can progress in my connection and my growth and deepen my understanding of this world in a slow process. And that's life, and that's most of the time. But sometimes the Jewish people have to become a people specifically from a place of servitude and specifically from a place of oppression, because sometimes the energy that is built up when we have restrictions and we have limitations, the energy that's built up, the koach, the potential that keeps building, is able to burst out and have an eternal effect, which is why we're celebrating, commemorating Pesach so long ago, something that happened so long ago, and we're commemorating it today, because the koach, the ability for us to actually understand what it means to be a Jew, we draw from that time when things were so restricted and so limited that I needed to create an energy, or the energy was created inevitably, that can actually affect eternity. And that takes us back to the times that we're living in. The times that we're living in are very difficult times. And everything around us, and everything that's around us is being questioned. And we're vulnerable. And we cannot expand horizontally. I heard an idea this week that there's a difference between Shabbos and Chag and Yom Tov. This is how they teach it in Chabad. And the Alter Rebbe explains that essentially Oneg is delight, is Shabbos, is going internal. Yom Tov or Chag is about Simcha, is about joy, is about expanding. However, on Shabbos, it's not necessarily about joys or expanding or traveling or expanding outward, but Shabbos, it's about going inward. Whereas Chag, we know that there are certain things on a holiday that are allowed. We're allowed to cook from an existing flame. We're allowed to cook. We're allowed to carry, even if there's no Eruv, because of the assumption is that I'm expanding and I'm growing and I'm having Simcha. But this year we don't have Simcha, or we have a limited amount of Simcha, because we have to stay home, and we can't go to shul, and we can't be social, and we have to be limited to the people, perhaps in our household, that we love, which is not a limitation, but those are the people that we're spending the next 3 days with, or perhaps the next 3 months with. But there's what's called Oneg, in which I'm going inwards. And it's very fascinating that we start counting the Sfiras HaOmer from Mimacharas HaShabbos, that sometimes Pesach is referred to as Shabbos because there's Simcha of expanding, but there's Oneg of going deeper in. And Oneg, or delight, or really focusing inward, is a Shabbos property, or is a trait of Shabbos that I'm actually needing to access on tonight, on Pesach, which is also called Shabbos. So on Pesach, it's not necessarily, this Pesach, it's not necessarily about expanding. It's not about growing horizontally, but it's about growing vertically. It's about understanding and going deeper in my connection. And where I am, and the place that I'm stationary, and I'm not, and on Shabbos, I don't necessarily carry outside of an Eruv. And I don't necessarily expand my borders horizontally, but I have the ability to go deeper in, and the ability to go and to form a deeper connection with myself and with our Creator. Now, what does this have to do with what we asked before? What we asked before was that how come the Seder night, how come we celebrate and commemorate the Seder by night and not by the daytime if we actually physically left Egypt? And the answer is because in our history, we also commemorated the Seder, we commemorated going out of Egypt, even though we were oppressed, even though we were in the Holocaust, even though we were in the Spanish Inquisition, even though we had incredible hardships. There were people that actually were free in their minds and were free in their spirits and in their hearts and their souls. And this is what the idea of Seder being by night teaches us. That the Geula, the redemption, the spirit of the Jewish people, or the spirit of humankind, is not limited to the parameters that are put on them from the external, from the outside. And that is why we commemorate that, specifically why we have the Seder at night, because it's here, and it's here. And if it's here and it's here, no matter what's happening outside of me, I can break through those parameters. So it's not just about the Jewish people leaving Egypt. It's about the human spirit not being limited to the physical. It's about the human spirit not being limited to the physical directives, or essentially the things that physically limit a human being. But a human being knows. A human being is able to go beyond those restrictions, is able to go in their hearts and in their minds. They're able to go beyond what is just in front of them. So when it says Yetzias Mitzrayim, it's not even specifically just for the Jewish people. But the world, says Rabbi Kook, has this spring, has this Aviv, in which the world has an ability to go beyond its restrictions, to go beyond its limitations. So it's not just about the Jewish people, but it's about the world. It's true that the Jewish people have to lead the way, and we are responsible for teaching this and for sharing this, and we are responsible to be this. We're responsible to know that it's true all over the world. There's no such thing as a Pesach hotel program now this year, and maybe next year. And there's no such thing as us really just joining 30 other people and having a mass Seder together where we're able to have so much fun and indulge in the social norms that a person usually does. And we have to reanalyze society, and we have to reanalyze my social norms, and we have to reanalyze my friendships, and we have to reanalyze our relationships, and we have to reanalyze my money and how I spend my money, and taking my money and spending on a Pesach program and going to a hotel. And I'm not saying that's bad. All I'm saying is we can't do those things anymore. So now I am at home, and now I have to be at home, and I have to be at home with the people that I'm most familiar with, and sometimes I have to be at home by myself, and hopefully I'm familiar with myself. But yet we know that doesn't limit my growth opportunity. And it doesn't limit the ability for me to go beyond the restrictions, beyond the borders. So says Rabbi Kook, the way we could understand and talk about the difficulties of the past. And when we talk about the difficulties of the past, we're not just talking about physically going out of Egypt, but we're talking about what makes the Jewish people is the ability to thrive when sometimes I'm just focusing on surviving. And the ability to go beyond and to go deeper and to not have the limitations limit me, but have the limitations perhaps deepen me. And that's what we're commemorating on Pesach. That is what we're commemorating on this holy day of Passover, on this night and this day and the next week of freedom, a true freedom. I eat matzah, and the reason why I eat matzah is because I'm not dependent on all the excess, on the luxury and the comfort. I love those things, and I want those things. I don't need those things. And this year more than ever, this is what Pesach is teaching us. And this year more than ever, this is what the times are calling, are demanding from us to become deeper, are demanding from us to become a free spirit that's not dependent on material to free them. That is what Pesach is about. And unfortunately, the times that we're living in right now, and there's so much tragedy, and there's so much difficulty, and there are people dying, and there are people that are sick. And thank God, Baruch Hashem, for those who've been dying, for my brother-in-law. My brother-in-law is off the ventilator, and thank God he is on his way home, and he should continue to get stronger and to get better. Pesach, Yaakov, Ben, Sarah, Leah. But there are others that are in a difficult spot and are continuously fighting for their lives. And there are others who've lost the fight for their lives, and their families are mourning in ways that they never thought they could mourn before, and never thought how isolated they can feel. And there are people who are worried about their lives who are feeling very isolated. So those are all factual. Those are all things that we cannot ignore and we have to focus on. And then for the rest of us who perhaps are not living with such a direct anxiety, or for us, or if we have the ability to actually rise above it or prove the anxiety in a larger context, or feel the pain of those who are suffering so terribly. For those of us who are able to sit down to a Seder tonight and to have a Chag and to try to focus on what on what this holiday is supposed to teach me, it's supposed to teach me that there are times, halach ma'anya, that there are bread, that there's a bread of affliction, or a poor man's bread that is free, or that is not that dependent on all the luxuries and the comforts, and that have a base substance to it that doesn't necessarily have the fluff of what challah and bread and all the excess of rich man's bread represents. But all this teaches us that sometimes our nation and the world have to go into a place of difficulty and a place of restriction in order to burst forth with such a positive energy. And that is why this is the beginning of Magid. And we talk about the story of Mitzrayim, the story about going out of Egypt, and we start gleaning messages, we start gleaning positive values from even things that are negative. And I go through Magid, and I tell the story, and I ask questions, and I ask deeper questions, and more questions, and I have a responsibility to do so for myself, for my children, for everybody. And I have a responsibility to go deeper and to go beyond the limitations on a night like tonight. So, for all those who are watching this year, Tafshin Pei, the year of difficulties in which everything around us is changing, I beg, I ask, I encourage all of us who are watching this, when we sit down tonight for the Seder, that we understand that this is such a great responsibility of us as the Jewish people and the world, but specifically now the Jewish people, to focus on what's important in their lives, and to focus and to reevaluate everything in our lives. And that's what matzah is, from an expression of tamtzis, as I mentioned before, of an expression of essence. and I am now refocusing on the essence, and I'm refocusing on what's important, and I'm refocusing on myself and my relationship and connection with my Creator. And if we're all able to do that, and if we're all able to really experience the Seder tonight in such a holy, uplifting way, in a way of oneg, not of simcha, in a way of really delighting in my relationship with my Creator, because I'm getting rid of all the external things that essentially block that or distract me. So I'm getting rid of all the external distractions that's represented by chametz. And I'm able to just focus on what makes me who I am, and my relationship with the Creator, and my relationship with God. And when we say Shir Hashirim on Shabbos, which we're supposed to read, Shir Hashirim, and I express how much of a mutual love there is between Creator and creature, between God and world. And although it's difficult to see right now, I still focus on that to be able to understand and to draw some inspiration or even some questions that can lead to deeper questions that can lead to a much, much more developed way of thinking. So I beg everybody, tonight by the Seder, when we're sitting down and eating matzah, and we're reclining both by our matzah and our 4 cups of wine in a way of expressing freedom, I'm understanding that the free spirit that I am is not dependent on all the things that I thought I needed. What an opportunity for us to grow. What an opportunity for us to evolve and change. So again, as a nation, we have to feel the pain of the nation and the world, and we cannot forget that. And we cannot stop davening for all those who need our tefillos and need our davening. And we cannot stop thinking about those orphans and the people who lost their lives. And we cannot stop thinking, because that's what a nation means, and that's what a world means. And the more the world and the nation unites in empathy, not in blame, not in anger, but in empathy and in love and in caring about and davening for each other, the more this plague doesn't have the ability to affect. And the more that this plague doesn't have the ability to increase harm in this world when we're so connected. And if we're so connected in such a deep way, then the magefa, then the plague cannot and should not be able to really grab hold and be able to affect us. And that's the bracha, and that's the wish, and that's the dream. So tonight, when we sit down and have our Pesach Seder, let us make sure to have our hearts and souls aligned, to be able to understand that Pesach frees me, and the lachma anya, the bread of affliction, or the bread that answers many questions, the matzah, it frees me because I'm focusing on the eternal. I'm focusing on my connection. I'm focusing on what's real and what's really true. And my part in my kiddush and my kaddish and my 4 cups of wine, and my responsibility is to express that, is to continuously share that, and to be a part of that. So now that we're about to start Chag HaAviv, the Pesach, the holiday of spring, of springing forth new values and springing forth positive love and positive thoughts and positive feelings from the place of restrictions and from the place of limitations. That is the Chag, that is the holiday that we're about to embark on. That is the holiday of Pesach. Pesach, may God have compassion. The idea, the word Pesach, according to Onkelos, Pesach doesn't mean necessarily skip over like we think, but it means to be chas. And Rashi quotes this as well, to have compassion. And in the merit of all of us having compassion on each other and ourselves as well, may God be compassionate with us. May God judge us with compassion, and may God see us as having the potential to go beyond the limitations and not needing those limitations and not needing those restrictions. May God send a refuah shalema, a complete healing through the hands of the doctors and the nurses who are on the front lines. May God send a refuah shalema. May God send a complete healing to all those who need it. May God send comfort to all those families who are in mourning right now. May we be able to celebrate Pesach the way it's supposed to be celebrated. So God willing, miracles will happen, and nature itself will be turned on its head. We'll be able to all be healthy and happy and reevaluate all these limitations and reevaluate all the luxuries and comforts in our life, to be able to appreciate that much more, to be able to appreciate them and not get lost in them, That is the bracha. That is Pesach. Wishing everybody a Chag Kasher V'Sameach, a holy, uplifting, deep, connected, happy, and kosher. Doing it the way we're supposed to be doing it. Pesach to everybody. Thank you very much for watching.